Hey, everybody, welcome to this Reversing Labs live stream. I'm your host. I'm Paul Roberts, the Director of Editorial and Content here, and I'm with my colleague, Lucia Valentish, who is a software threat researcher here at Reversing Labs. And this week published some really interesting research on some malicious campaigns, software supply chain campaigns on the NPM and GitHub platform that actually involved Ethereum smart contracts. So we are excited to have Lucia on and talk a little bit about what you find. Lucia, welcome.
Hello, Paul. Thank you for having me here.
It's great to have you and super interesting research. Thank you. For the folks who aren't familiar with you, just give us a quick rundown on you and the work you do here at Reversing Labs.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lucia Valentich. I've been with Reversing Labs for a couple of years now. And here I'm a software threat researcher where I try to find malicious NPM and Ruby Gems packages. And whenever I find something interesting, something new, something worth researching, I make research about it and write a blog about it, just like the one I published on Wednesday.
Really interesting post. And like you pointed out in the post, it lines up with other findings we've had in recent months, you and your colleague Carlo. So this was a campaign that spanned both NPM and GitHub. How did it first get on your radar and our radar here at Reversing Labs? What about these packages first caught your attention?
So the first package we caught, actually my colleague Carlo discovered it. It was an interesting package. It was very simple, obfuscated, but it was very interesting because we found out it used Ethereum smart contracts to deliver second stage payload. So usually downloaders that we found on NPM, PIPy, whatever, they download second stage from already hard-coded URLs inside the scripts that are already inside. But this time around, the malicious script would contact Ethereum smart contract where URL for C2 server was located. And from there, malicious command would download second stage. And we thought the package was very interesting. But once we started researching more, we found even more and bigger stories that are connected with GitHub.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. So the packages you find, what the one that you mostly wrote about on NPM was this Color Tools v2, but it was basically a copy of another package that we had found and were tracking. We'd found, told NPM, they took it down, but we were continuing to monitor. And that was MIMELib2. Are these, we often see, and you've written about typo squatting attacks where malicious actors will create packages that are named pretty similar to or somehow impersonate, look like they're an add-on to some popular packages. That's what's going on here with Color Tools and MIMELib. Were these typo squatting or not really?
I don't think they are typo squatting, but I think color in general, I think malicious actors like to use as a name in malicious packages because if you're using some packages, if you want to try to add colors
To your UI or
to your
whatever.
UI, whatever, you would download some packages connected with colors. So
Right.
maybe they were trying to invoke color related stuff,
Okay.
I think.
Okay. So that's something we see. And talk just a little bit on the Ethereum smart. So when you looked into this Color Tools v2 package, what did you find inside it? Was it a sophisticated package? And how did you make the connection out to these smart contracts?
So the package itself was very interesting. They didn't try to make it sophisticated or complicated or anything. They didn't try to even hide malicious payloads. They did try to obfuscate it, but it was
Good.
very easily deobfuscated, yes. And once we deobfuscated it, we found that they used Ethereum contracts. So of course we searched for it. We searched on Ethereum sites, and because Ethereum smart contracts are basically smart programs and they can be thought as open source APIs, you can find source code of them
Mm-hmm.
on their site. So of course, once we searched what was inside, we saw URL to some C2 server that
Right.
had malicious command inside.
Smart contracts are used for automation, basically, and with platforms like the Ethereum blockchain platform. I
Yeah,
mean, that's
they
kind of their focus.
basically small programs on blockchain.
And what you said is the package wasn't really that obfuscated, but often what we see is the opposite. So they might take the content of a legitimate package and just copy it into the new one, but have a very small part of it that is obfuscated. But if you're just looking at it, scanning that code, you might not see that obfuscation, but no effort to do that. This was just straight malicious payload, obfuscated. So a big red flag. And when you dug further, you figured out the reason for that, which was the NPM packages weren't actually the heart of the campaign. That was on GitHub. So how do you make the connection from these NPM package, Color Tools v2, and what was going on GitHub?
So basically, whenever we find some interesting NPM packages, that's the same with Pi, Ruby Gems, whatever, we are trying to expand the story. We are trying to find what's the impact, where if they are used anywhere. We are trying to find even more packages that are connected with a campaign. So of course, we are searching multiple different platforms to find connections with something. So of course, we searched GitHub to find connection with this package. We tried to find the author of the package, or we tried to find the package itself. Was it used anywhere? So of course, we found these few GitHub repositories. I think there are 4 of them that were using this package as dependency.
And these were all crypto focused packages, right? At least that's what they presented themselves as. What were they
Yes,
promising to do? What were they posing as?
they were posing as a high performance automation tool for new token listings and to execute trades on Solana blockchain with minimal
Okay.
setup. So the GitHub repository that will fix your problems that would be minimal setup, and you could use it to do blockchain stuff.
And when you first looked at these, they looked kind of like established projects, right? Active maintainers, a lot of reviews, a lot of people following the projects. Talk about that.
When we first saw this GitHub repository and that it used malicious NPM package, we thought GitHub repository is hijacked because it looked really legitimate. It looked loved. It had a lot of stars. A lot of people were using it, watching it. There were a lot of forks, so people were developing with it. There were also a lot of commits. At the time of writing the blog, there were 60,000 commits or something. So basically, the
Wow.
GitHub repository looked really legitimate because on the first glance, you would look how it looks. It had a lot of files, it had a lot of folders and stuff like that. But once we start researching, all those accounts that fork the GitHub repository, that watched GitHub repository, were faked. They were all made at the beginning of July, and they were all probably made by the same threat actors because they were really simple. They were made in the same way. And all those commits were also fake because threat actors probably put out some automation tool. So every day from the end of July to the beginning of August, every day they were pushing new commits in like thousands and thousands new commits.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but 60,000 commits in the space of about 4 or 6 weeks. I don't know how unusual that is. Is that in and of itself? Whoa. Or might you see that in a very established project package?
Well, I'm not a developer myself, but I
Yeah.
think that's a bit weird.
Yeah.
So big projects do have a lot of commits if you
Right.
look at those GitHub repository, but they usually have multiple commits over multiple years, not over
Right.
multiple
Weeks.
weeks or multiple
Right.
days even. Because this was like 60,000 commits in a matter of days, which it's a little
It's like
bit
they set up
substantial.
this script and then they forgot to shut it off.
Yeah. And the commits were only like adding license and removing it. Adding,
Right.
those
Right.
were the only commits that were
Right.
pushed.
What's the lowest bar you can do to actually get a commit registered? And they figured out, oh, yeah, we can just modify the license document over and over again. Interesting. We don't have to submit code or anything like that. Interesting. What do we understand about what the overall kind of goal of this campaign was? Obviously, it seems focused on the crypto community. I would assume, theft of assets, but what do we understand about what was the big idea here?
I think the big idea, they try to go unnoticed because they thought on NPM they would go noticed, but the way they did the code on GitHub, they put NPM as dependency. So when someone would look at the code, it wouldn't find anything malicious per se, because no
On
malicious
GitHub,
code
right?
on GitHub, at least. You would have to download every dependency and looked at every line of code to actually find something. So I think they were trying to go unnoticed. But I don't know why they didn't put effort into making NPM package more believable, because they really put a lot of effort into making GitHub repositories believable. So I'm not sure
Right.
why they didn't do it with NPM packages.
Right.
Maybe it was just a testing, so maybe later they would do something more
On the
interesting.
NPM side, right? And the downloader, the NPM component, is this kind of downloading some kind of info stealer? Is that our understanding of what the final act would be? Is putting some malware info stealer on the developer's system, or what do we know? Steal credentials or stuff like that?
To be honest, I got corona, so I didn't have time to check, but I know it was malicious. But it
Mm.
was probably info stealer, because whenever some malware is connected with crypto community, it's always info stealer or
Right.
backdoor, maybe.
And we noted, I mean, we said in our annual 2025 report, we had 23 separate crypto related campaigns in 2024. I'm sure 2025, we're going to see a similar trend, right? Which is you're a developer working on crypto or blockchain related apps. You really have to be on your toes, as we would say in English.
Yeah. It already started happening at the beginning of the year, because we have seen in March and April, I think, we have seen crypto community being targeted by other NPM packages. In the March and April, they were including into legitimate software connected with crypto, they were including malicious payloads.
And this using smart contracts lines up with other behavior we've seen by malicious actors to disguise basically command and control, C2 communications and infrastructure, right? Carlo wrote about GitHub GISTs being used. We've seen communications to Google and Microsoft clouds being used to disguise these communications. This is part of a larger effort to just be persistent and not have the command and control communications set off red flags at the compromised organization.
Yeah, malicious actors are always finding new ways to hide their malicious payloads just by looking at a code or just by analyzing it. It wouldn't be found because all the commands, all C2 infrastructure is located somewhere else. With Carlo, with GitHub Gists, it was on GitHub, there was malicious payload. So if you just were trying to search for URL or something in script, you wouldn't find it. Here, you wouldn't find malicious command that would download anything. And this package posed as a package for blockchain. So if you would see smart contract being used, you wouldn't be suspicious of it. Also, with the campaign in April and March, you wouldn't find malicious payload stealing those coins, crypto coins, but they would be hidden inside your
Right.
locally installed software that you wouldn't think of scanning, because you already scanned it, you already installed it, like it's in your computer,
Part of your
it's part
development
of your
pipeline.
system. Yes.
Okay, so that brings us to the final question, which is for developers, what should they be taking away from your report and how should they be changing what they do? It seems like there's this sort of zero trust notion for developers, which is do not trust any of the packages, no matter how popular they seem to be, and be very wary of anything that you're downloading. So if you were talking to a developer and wanted to get them oriented towards this type of campaign, what would your advice be?
I think, especially with developers that work with the crypto community adjacent, I think you should be vigilant and mindful what you are including in your development cycle, because especially crypto community has been targeted for 2 years now. So I think you should check, maybe try to check if the package is used, try to be aware if something malicious inside, you can try to find by yourself if it's malicious, or you can use like other sites. You can use even secure software that your ReversingLabs developed and see what you're including in your development cycle.
And even that process that you went through of peeling back the covers on those GitHub projects and realizing, oh, these are all kind of sock puppet accounts that are how is that a lot of work? Is that something an individual developer could do for themselves, of just digging into who are the maintainers? Who are these people? Who are the people liking this? Is this legit, or is it?
The bad thing is, I think developers don't have that much time, because on the first glance, the GitHub repository would look clean, it would look normal, but I don't think they would go and peel, because in this case, it was very obvious all developers were fake, commits were fake, everything was fake.
Right.
But if malicious actors put more effort into it, I think they could make GitHub repository even more believable, because imagine if they took 2-3 years into developing those GitHub repositories, actually making actual commits, and then after 3 years they could upload malicious commits and no one would know.
And we've
So
seen and written about packages that basically do that, that pose, that seem to be legitimate, have legitimate updates for 6 months or a year or longer, and then turn malicious. There is also, we should point out, ReversingLabs has secure.software, our platform. So these are for packages that have already been out there. But if you're a developer, you can use secure.software to figure out if what you're about to looking into using is legitimate or not, right?
yeah, exactly. And that's very up to date, because we as a threat researchers, we are actually every day we are trying to find something malicious. And if it's malicious, we mark it so you can see in real time, you can see in the SpectraShare community what's malicious and what's not.
Okay. So final words of advice to the developers out there working on NPM, working on GitHub, working on crypto or blockchain apps. What's your advice?
Be vigilant and be aware what you are including in your development cycle before, you include. Don't include it.
Don't be in a rush. Slow down.
Don't be in a rush.
Right.
Slow
Right.
down, be mindful,
Right.
try to
Right.
find if what you're including is safe, basically.
Because malicious actors are really playing on that idea of developers are stressed. They got a lot on their plate. They're moving quickly, and that's typo squatting. All these attacks play. There's a big social engineering aspect to all of these campaigns of just counting on people being in a hurry, not looking closely, pulling something down,
Being in a
integrating it.
rush, something.
Yeah, being in a rush. So slow down, chill out.
Yeah.
Hey, Lucia, thank you so much for joining us. Your weekend's about to start. So I really appreciate it. And I'm sure the folks watching do as well. Really interesting research. I'm sure we'll have more from you in the future, but thanks so much for the hard work you do.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul, for having me.
Our pleasure. We'll do it again. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned. We'll have more research coming up in the future as Lucia and her colleagues investigate, interrogate platforms like NPM, GitHub, and Python package index, you name it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll do it again.